Right. So let's talk about the animal that has somehow convinced most of humanity that it's a low-effort, low-stakes, easy first pet for a child. A small, fluffy thing you keep in a hutch in the garden, feed some pellets, and periodically pet. An animal so widely misunderstood that the welfare charities dedicated to them use the word crisis without irony. The rabbit. One of the most biologically bizarre, cognitively underestimated animals that has ever shared a sofa with a human being. And yes, I said sofa. We'll get there. Welcome to Rabbit Facts. We're going to cover the 1,000-year argument about how domestication actually happened, ears that rotate 270 degrees independently of each other. A digestive process so strange that scientists still find it remarkable. A single man on a Christmas morning in 1859, who, with the best possible intentions, managed to unleash one of the most devastating ecological catastrophes in modern history. And what a rabbit is actually trying to tell you when it does a wild spinning leap in the air out of nowhere. Let's go. Every good origin story starts with a contradiction, and the rabbit's is a good one. Ask almost anyone where domestic rabbits come from, and they'll tell you French monks, 6th century, Pope Gregory I, something about Lent. The story goes that around 600 AD, the Pope issued an edict declaring that rabbit fetuses were technically fish and could therefore be eaten during Lent. French monks, apparently seizing this loophole with surprising enthusiasm, began breeding wild European rabbits within their monastery walls. Neat, clean, historically satisfying. Also, almost certainly never happened. The story was likely invented in the 19th century and has been circulating unchallenged ever since. A genetic analysis published in the journal Science found that the transformation of wild rabbits into tame rabbits involved genes controlling the development of the brain and nervous system, a process that can't be pinned to a single moment in time. An Oxford research team drilling into the genetics found a split between wild French and domestic rabbit populations that may have occurred between 12,200 and 17,700 years ago, thousands of years before any monk reached for a hutch. What the evidence suggests is that domestication wasn't a moment. It was a slow negotiation across generations, first in the Iberian Peninsula, then spreading as the Romans moved through Europe. It took more than 2,000 years for differences between wild and domestic rabbits to be visible in their bones. That's not a single Friday afternoon in a monastery. That's a civilizational scale slow burn. All of this springs from a single species, Oryctolagus cuniculus, the European rabbit. Every domestic rabbit on Earth, every house rabbit, every Flemish giant and Netherland dwarf and French Angora descends from that one lineage. There is only one species of rabbit that has ever been domesticated. The Americas had abundant rabbit populations, and humans there used them extensively, but never domesticated them. Something worth thinking about the next time your rabbit sits in a cardboard box and stares at you like a very small landlord. Quick thing before we get to the body. Rabbits are not rodents. This surprises people. They look rodent-adjacent, but rabbits belong to a completely separate order of mammals called Lagomorpha. The key difference is in the mouth. Lagomorphs have a second, smaller pair of incisors sitting directly behind the main front teeth. Rodents have one pair. That detail alone splits them into an entirely different biological classification. All 28 of a rabbit's teeth grow continuously throughout their life at roughly 2 to 3 millimeters per week. Teeth that grow forever and are never adequately worn down don't stop. They grow into each other, into the jaw. Dental disease is one of the leading causes of death in domestic rabbits, almost always preventable, almost always the result of a diet too low in the long-stemmed grass hay that a rabbit's teeth evolved specifically to grind. Now, the body. A rabbit's ears can rotate up to 270 degrees without moving any other body part, detect sounds up to 2 miles away, and operate independently, one monitoring the left while the other covers the right. They are also thermal regulators. A network of blood vessels in each ear expands on hot days to release heat and contracts in cold weather to retain it. A long-range surveillance system and a biological thermostat, 2 functions in 2 ears. The eyes are positioned high on the sides of the skull, giving a field of vision that is nearly 360 degrees without turning the head. The trade-off is depth perception. Eyes that far apart don't overlap their fields of view in front of the face. Rabbits compensate with parallaxing. They move their head back and forth to gauge the movement of one object relative to others. It looks like curious head bobbing. It is sophisticated distance calculation. Rabbits are also crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk, precisely the light conditions where their vision is sharpest and their predators are half-blind. All of that is impressive. Then you get to the digestive system, and the rabbit becomes something close to science fiction. Rabbits are hindgut fermenters. Digestion of tough plant fiber happens in a large pouch called the cecum, packed with bacteria that break down cellulose. The system then produces 2 entirely different types of output. One is the familiar dry pellet, actual waste. The other is a soft, gel-coated, nutrient-dense cluster called a secotrope. The rabbit bends around and consumes it directly from its body before it ever reaches the ground, then runs it through digestion a second time. The mucus coating protects the contents through the stomach's acidity, so the small intestine can extract everything the first pass couldn't. Secotropes contain around 28 to 30% crude protein, B vitamins, short-chain fatty acids, and essential amino acids. A rabbit practicing this process can digest 75 to 85% of the protein in its hay. Without secotropes, rabbits suffer severe deficiencies. The process isn't optional. It is as fundamental as breathing. You will almost certainly never see it happen. Healthy rabbits eat secotropes immediately and privately. The only time you find them in a rabbit's living space is when something has gone wrong. Rabbits communicate almost entirely through body language, and the vocabulary is far richer than most owners realize. The thump, a hind leg slammed against the floor, is a warning signal evolved to send vibrations through the warren, alerting every rabbit in it to danger. In a house, it means your rabbit has heard, seen, or smelled something it considers a threat, which could be a fox, a passing vehicle, or in at least one documented case, the specific sound of one owner's particular pair of slippers. At the opposite end of the emotional register is the binky, a mid-run sideways launch into a spinning airborne twist, landing and continuing as if nothing happened. It is involuntary. You cannot make a rabbit binky. You can only create conditions in which one might occur. A rabbit that binkies regularly is expressing genuine joy as clearly as any animal can express anything. A rabbit that never binkies is expressing the opposite just as clearly. Then there is the flop. A rabbit that was one moment sitting upright suddenly throws itself sideways onto the floor with complete abandon. The first time you see it, it looks like death. It is the deepest expression of trust and contentment in the rabbit's emotional register. A rabbit that feels completely safe. In rabbit terms, it is a compliment of the highest order. On Christmas Day, 1859, a shipment of 24 rabbits arrived in Melbourne, Australia from England, a gift for Thomas Austin, a wealthy English settler who missed the hunting traditions of home. He released them. Just 3 years later, thousands were hopping about his estate. By 1865, he had killed 20,000 on his property and barely dented the population. The rabbits spread across the continent at more than 60 miles per year, covering most of mainland Australia within half a century. Today, around 200 million feral rabbits cause an estimated $200 million a year in agricultural damage, and a 2022 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed that nearly every one of them traces its lineage back to Austin's Christmas delivery. One man, one gift. One of history's most consequential single acts of ecological disruption. And finally, the welfare problem. Because rabbits are the third most popular pet in many countries and among the most consistently misunderstood. The average domestic rabbit lives 8 to 12 years. That is longer than most dogs. Unlike dogs, rabbits have evolved to mask illness. Showing weakness as a prey animal is dangerous, so by the time symptoms appear, the problem is often already advanced. A survey of rabbit owners found that over a 24-hour period, rabbits spend an average of 11 hours inside their hutch. 1 in 10 have no run at all. A further 1 in 10 don't have enough room to hop. The vast majority of those owners reported that their rabbit was loved. The issue is not cruelty. It is a widespread misunderstanding of what a rabbit actually needs: space to run and dig, companionship, hay as the foundation of its diet, and a vet who specializes in them. And owners who understand that a rabbit sitting still while being held is not content. It is frightened and freezing, because that is what prey animals do when they cannot escape. Real rabbit contentment looks like binkies and flops, and a rabbit that, in a moment of complete trust, closes its eyes in your presence. Fully, genuinely, eyes shut. It means they have decided, on the evidence available to an animal that has survived by trusting nothing it didn't have to, that you are safe. They've been waiting a long time for someone to look. Thanks for watching.